This is Gene Monterstelli. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape in Williamsburg and Brooklyn. This is episode 509, originally aired May 12th, 2021. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you get a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today's podcast is a little bit different. I'm going to be giving you an update on some changes that are really, really good that are coming to the website. So if this is the first time that you've listened to the Tapping Q&A podcast and you're looking for some instruction on how to get more out of your tapping practice, to take action easier, to find root causes, I'd encourage you to visit tappingpodcast.com and check out our 508 previous episodes if you're listening to this the week it came out, or the entire archive can be found there. Before I share with you the story of the changes that are happening on the website, I want to give you a little context and just kind of let you know what has happened over the course of the last couple of months, as well as the last 14 years. And all of that is going to inform what is going on. So over the course of my practice, on 3 different occasions, over the course of about 8 or 10 days, I had a whole bunch of clients fire me all at once. And the reasons that they decided to stop working with me range from changes in their life to someone complaining about the fact that ice cubes were clinking in my glass while we were doing a session, and because that was the case, it was obvious that I was not paying attention. The reality is in that particular case, it was a 105-degree day in Baltimore, Maryland, on the harbor, where it was really gross and sticky. I had to turn off my air conditioning so they could hear me clearly, because I didn't have the audio rig that I currently have today. And I was literally sitting there in my underwear, dripping in sweat. This is before Zoom, so you can get that horrible image out of your mind. And I was drinking ice water as a way to navigate what was going on. But that was the reason why. And so after the first time it happened, it freaked me out to all of a sudden have all of these clients decide that they wanted to stop working with me. Second time it happened, a number of years later, freaked me out a little bit. And then in reflection of that, I was in a situation where I'm like, okay, what's going on here? This is more than once. And what I had realized was that in both of those cases, I had been going through a transformation and an evolution at a rate that the people I was serving at that particular moment was not. And that doesn't mean that I was more evolved than them, but the things that I found interesting, the things that were transformational for me, were not the same things that were lining up with my audience. And so it was an issue of fit. And I say this all the time to my business clients, is that when someone says no, they're not judging you and they're not judging your work. They're saying this is not the right fit for me right now based on the information I have and the resource state that I'm in. And so it's a statement of fit. And so the third time that this happened in my practice, at first I freaked out, but for a very short period of time, I'm like, oh, look at that. Yes, I have been evolving and I have been transforming, and all of these amazing things internally have shown up. And in all 3 cases, what immediately followed that was new people, new opportunities, new experiences showed up that were a much better fit for me and were a much better fit for my clients. And so I want you to hear that particular piece of it loud and clear. It's not a value judgment on me or a value judgment on them. It's a statement of fit. Now, if you've been paying attention to the website at all over the course of the last couple of months, I have been working really, really hard to share with you this really amazing program called the Tapping Success Academy. And over the course of February, March, and April, I was frustrated and disappointed in the lack of success that particular program has had, because I spent a huge amount of time on it. I mean, we're all in a circumstance where when you invest hundreds, literally hundreds of hours in something that you believe in, and people are not responding as excitedly as you would like, it is disappointing. And so last month, I was on a Zoom conversation with one of my clients. And at the beginning of every single one of our calls, she wants to do a check-in with me. She wants to hear what's going on in my life because it makes it easier for her to be coached. I only talk to her once a month, and she's like, I need to know where you are so it's easier for me to show up and be where I am, and we can do this stuff. And I'm like, great, that's awesome. And so in that conversation, I just shared with her some really cool things that are coming, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, as well as my disappointment in how this program had not been as successful as I would like it to be. And her response was, well, of course, I know why. You'll figure it out. And I said, no. If you know, just tell me what's going on. And she says, you've outgrown your audience again. And I go, okay, great. That makes perfect sense. And she started to explain it to me. And I said, no, I've been through this 3 times before. As you say that makes perfect sense. And outgrow is, again, the wrong word. The reality is I have, over the course of the last year and a half, been doing a lot of internal work. Daily tapping, and just really some amazing transformation has been happening in my life. And I have been presenting and producing content from that pre-transformational space, not from where I am right now. And so over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've spent a lot of time really just ruminating with this and trying to figure out the best way forward. And in doing that reflection, I came to the realization that what I need to do is I need to be much clearer in my messaging and much clearer in the way that I'm sharing resources with you, so it's easier for you to find exactly the type of resource that you are looking for. Because I know that right now I'm doing a million different things, and it's hard to tell the tenor and tone of where things are coming from. And so over the last weekend, I was sitting in one of my favorite coffee shops here in Brooklyn. The beautiful thing about my neighborhood is all of the restaurants and bars and coffee shops have little backyards, little garden areas that you can sit in. And so I've been just sitting outside on the weekends, eating beautiful pastries and drinking coffee and just thinking. And I actually came to a drawing that makes a great deal of sense for me of how everything fits together, which is going to make it so much easier for me to serve you and give you the content that is most useful in a clear, concise way. And so I ended up drawing this Venn diagram with 3 circles that overlap, and there is an intersection between these that is going to help me to shape and form what is going forward. And so the 3 areas that I found that I am most fascinated by, and as you hear this, if you've been paying attention to my work for any period of time, you're not going to be surprised by this. The first is the idea of changing resource state. And when I say resource state, what I mean by that is, how do we feel? Changing my emotions, going from sad to happy, going from hesitant to excited, going from tired to having energy. That a resource state is something that we can change in a moment. And when we change that resource state, we make different choices. Emotional first aid is a great way of applying tapping for that, but there are lots and lots of ways that we can do that. So it changes how we feel in a moment, which allows us to move forward in a different way. The second thing that I'm really interested in, and this is going to be no surprise, is that I'm really fascinated by taking action and self-sabotage. If you've been paying attention to the work, if you signed up for my freebie, I love thinking about that. Because for me, the consequence of transformation is taking new action. And so how we show up in the world and the things that we do or the things that we don't do reflect who we are. And so I'm really fascinated by that. The third area that I'm interested in is the philosophical and spiritual idea of transformation in how we show up in the world. And sometimes it is purely a spiritual conversation, and sometimes that's a more deep intersection between how we see ourselves in the world and how we use these tools. And as a perfect example of this, in the end of last month's Art of Delivery class, we ended up having this really awesome conversation about revenge. And what is revenge? And why do we have revenge fantasies? And how do we approach feeling a sense of revenge? And is that something that we tap for and think about and that sort of stuff? And so it wasn't this is how I tap for feeling revenge. It was, as a human, why do we experience that particular feeling? Is it useful? How is it useful? How do we transform it? So I love having those deeper conversations about healing and transformation. And so again, we end up with these three circles. We end up with changing our resource state, taking action and self-sabotage, and the spiritual, philosophical, big picture questions of transformation and the human experience. With these new revelations, what I realize is I need to restructure the way that I'm presenting content. And so this is the plan going forward. So the Tapping Q&A podcast is going to continue to exist in a form that you are very, very used to. But there's going to be a couple of slight changes. The first change is the podcast is now going to come out every other week instead of coming out every week. The podcasts that come out every other week are going to be focused on interviews with other tapping practitioners, other transformational folks to give new worldviews, to help us to understand what is going on, and to be having these Art of Delivery deep transformational questions. So how do we apply tapping beyond just dealing with the emotion that we're feeling in the moment? In the weeks that new podcasts do not come out, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sharing those how do we change resource state tools. How do we feel better around grief or feel better in this particular moment, or tapping scripts and tap along audios. The beautiful thing is, at this point, the website has about 1,100 resources on it. And there are a number of really amazing resources that have been created over the years because of promptings from listeners and readers just like you. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to start highlighting the best of the best. Because even if you have been with me for this entire 13 and a half year journey that the website has existed, those old resources are evergreen, and we'll be able to hear them and reflect on them in new ways. And I'm not just going to be representing them, but instead I'm going to take these old ideas that got lots of comments and lots of feedbacks, and I'm going to spruce them up a little bit. I'm going to make them a little more modern to reflect what I'm now understanding, because I am a different practitioner than I was 12 years ago, and I'm a radically different person than I was 12 years ago. As this happens, you will notice over the course of the next number of months that the website is going to evolve and transform to reflect these changes. So again, it's easier for you to find the resources that are most helpful for you. The search function in WordPress is kind of sufficient, but it's not super, super great. And when you're trying to find something inside of 1,100 resources, it's difficult to find the thing that is exactly right for you. And so with this subtle changes to the website, it's going to make it easier to find all of that stuff. And it's not going to be the website is down and then there's this brand new design. Instead, I'm going to keep the website up and I'm going to just slowly make changes to the site. So over the course of the next couple of months, you're going to see changes to the website. And as that happens, if you struggle to find something that you knew where it was before, just shoot me an email, gene@tappingqa.com. I will help you to find the resources that you cannot immediately find because I have moved them or I've changed the navigation. I know how hard it is when navigation changes when you're used to it. So I will help any way that I can. The other part of this is I'm going to continue to focus on this art of delivery. even though I've only been using that specific vocabulary since I did the Mastering Art of Delivery classes last August and September, and have been doing the Art of Delivery monthly classes, I'm going to continue to focus on that I truly love those classes. And even if you are not a practitioner, but you're interested in going deeper with your tapping practice, I would really encourage you to check those out. You can go to artofdeliverymonthly.com or shoot me an email and I'll get you access to how to find those classes. We currently have about 85 people who are participating in those, either from just watching the replays after the fact or participating in the class. The small group time in that class is awesome. That as much as people have enjoyed the classes, it seems that they enjoy each other and the time where they're trying the tools out with each other as much, if not more, than the presentations that we are giving. Again, if you have more questions about that, just drop me a note, or you can go to artofdeliverymonthly.com. The other two things that are going to happen is over the course of the next 4 months, I am going to be creating 2 more podcasts. One of them is going to be purely a conversation about the spiritual aspects of who we are in the world and how we are called to connect with and love and support and learn from one another. It will not be a tapping podcast, but the concepts will be there. And when that comes about, more than likely that will be launched the 2nd or 3rd week of June. I will send you a short note about that, but I'm not going to overrun your inbox or this podcast with that because they are so different. The second podcast that I'm going to create is going to be a podcast that's going to come out 3 or 4 times a week. They're going to be short 5-minute reflections, more specifically around taking action and self-sabotage and building a practice and moving forward. And so you can see the idea in all of this is in the tapping arena, there's going to be the response to changing our resource and the bigger philosophical questions about transformation through the podcast, through the website, through the Art of Delivery stuff. And I'm going to categorize all of that in a way that makes it easier for you to access. The deeply spiritual conversations are going to be offloaded into this other new podcast. And then much more thought about self-sabotage, taking action, tapping related and not tapping related are going to show up in podcast number 3. If you are still listening to this audio, thank you very much. This is a lot of information and it feels a little self-indulgent, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood what was coming as we moved forward so that you could find the resources that are most useful for you, or as these changes evolve and you decide that the new direction that I'm going, because like you, I am in constant change and transformation mode myself. If it is something that does not serve you, it'll be easy for you to recognize why, so that you can go online and you can find the 87 million tapping resources that are out there and hopefully find the one that is the perfect right fit for you. If you have any questions about anything that I shared today, as always, I would love to hear from you. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. The thing that I would encourage you to do is I'd encourage you to keep asking questions, keep making recommendations about what is useful for you so we can find a way to slot it into that website. And if there is something out there that isn't the right fit for you, awesome. I understand that. I am not everybody's cup of tea. I do not have a monopoly on truth, and the way I do it is not the best way. The way I do it is the way I do it. And my hope is, as I share my experience from my client experiences, from my training, from my personal reflection, from my own transformation, that there might be occasionally a nugget or two in there that is useful for you. Again, just drop me a note, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. If you haven't done so already and you've listened to this and this is your first time here, or you've been with me a while, go to tappingpodcast.com. Like I said, there's over 200 hours of free, amazing content. Some of the best transformational practitioners in the world have given me time to share their experience and their expertise. Make sure you go check that out. If you do love the stuff that shows up on the website, the best and easiest way to show appreciation and say thank you is to share the content with a friend. Don't spam your inbox, but there might be one or two people who would really appreciate the content that I am sharing on the website or through the podcast. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. Thanks for listening to my self-indulgent little ramble here, and I look forward to you next week with another installment of our regularly scheduled program. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli and Tapping Q&A.